innovation, we need to be prepared for that. And how does place affect how we think about ourselves, our identity, our vision, and our goals? And so we've benefited from our phenomenal outside, I was going to call it council, our architects, who are going to present in a little bit after I get to tell you all the good things going on. The beautiful picture that we're drawing. By regulation, we're supposed to do this every 10 years. We should probably be doing it much more often than that. 10 years in today's world seems like, forever. But we've taken the next step here, and have something to show you that we will continue to work with. Like every plan, you're going to continue to tweak it. So I'm excited about that. So that's our agenda for this morning. Throughout my presentation, which is fairly short, I hope you'll ask questions. I am going to talk about our increased enrollments, which has led to issues around housing. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Frank and Alan are new best friends over finding and securing space now and building space for the future, and anything in between those two objectives. So we'll start with the first thing I want to show here is, let's see if I can get this to work. This is always what happens. There we go. I want you to see this new video that Tisha's team has put together that's really talking about how I want us to describe ourselves. Before I start this, I'll say, I told a group of stakeholders the other day, here's 3 phrases, pick any one of them, I don't care, but when you leave here, this is how I want you to talk about the university. I talk about us as a university on the rise. I talked about that in our flagship address last fall, and then everything that happened this fall on the campus has just sort of underscored that. I think this started in the athletic department, we're the everything school. And they like to talk about us, we're going to win and dominate every sport, and my view is we're going to win and dominate in every major academic undertaking we have and the student and faculty experience here. So we're the everything school, and we're also I heard one of our VFLs say, Alan Houston said, I go around the country, the world actually, representing the NFL, and I talk about Tennessee in this way. Tennessee is winning, not just a football. And so I want you to see how we're shifting or adding language about how we talk about ourselves, and it gives you some tools you can use as well. Oops. Now I need someone to start the video for me. Here we go.
We are a university on the rise. I like to use that phrase. But what it means to me is there's momentum in everything. We're moving. All the while we've been ranked in the top 10 in football. I say, well, we're the top 10 in nuclear engineering or polymer science or you name it. We're just moving in a really positive direction. And I couldn't be more excited about it. I've always been a big believer that success leads to more successes. I think the way you build momentum in a large, sprawling organization is you get a group of leaders who are all committed to the mission, the goal, and that have got positive energy is contagious. So when deans are excited, their department heads are excited, faculty get excited. When vice chancellors are excited, the people who work for them, they feel it. So I think it starts with the leader and her team. And we're responsible as much for the energy on campus as we are all the other outcomes. I actually think the energy leads to better outcomes. The Monday after we beat Alabama, that was big for us. My cabinet met, and we spent an hour trying to think through how do we use this moment? How do we use this moment, the attention we're getting in this area to accelerate what we're doing in other areas? And it's happened kind of all year long. I feel the same thing on the academic side. Our growth in students is largely due to the fact that students are coming here, having a great experience, going back home, and telling others about it. And so we're getting applications from around the country, around the world. I want the world to see us for who we are. What's unique about us is that we're doing a lot of the things that other R1 land grants would do, but we're doing it in a different way because we're the volunteers, and that means something really special.
So I think thank you, Tisha, your group did a terrific job at putting that together, and now can I get that? Okay, I'm just moving a little too fast. One of the things I want, I'll just pause here for a second. One of the things we're really committed to at the cabinet level is, and throughout the campus, is working on how do we change the culture to be a culture that, gosh, what are we looking at up there? Those look more interesting than what I'm talking about.
We're getting it back on your car.
Okay. Okay, so we've been talking with the deans, with the cabinet on how do we create a culture quickly that is about innovation and change and growth and new opportunities and new ways of doing things. Changing your culture takes a long time, and I'm really impatient. I don't want to wait forever. And we've worked on a number of ways of trying to think about that. One of the things that we started this past year that has never existed here is something we're calling the Chancellor's Leadership Academy. And we really kind of stole or borrowed this idea from Clemson, the president there, who I got to become best friends with at the Orange Bowl, has been doing this for some time. And that is, okay, now we're all set. No, we're good. So I asked deans and vice chancellors to nominate people from their departments, their colleges, that they really look at them and say, this person's part of the future. And they may be in a leadership role now, or they may be someone who could become a dean or a department head someday. And so we spend the better part of one day a month with me and various members from the cabinet talking about what it means to lead in higher ed. And you know, I can't help, I'm a former teacher, so I like to get up there for a little bit and talk about leadership. I did earn my living for 30 years researching and teaching leadership to executives, and then members of my team and deans come in and just talk through, and we have a really good conversation about what do we need to do. One of the things we talked about the other day, for example, is, you know, universities, the way we've historically worked is in, you know, our silos, our disciplinary-based silos, and we all know that, and we all say we need to get out of those and work across. But how really are we going to make that happen? Like, how do the people down in the organization contribute to that? So that's been really exciting, and I love it. Every one Wednesday a month, we're all together for about 6.5 hours, talking about how do we make it happen here at UT. So that's a little aside. So let's talk for a minute. You've read the newspapers or you've heard it on TV. I want to make sure that the record is correct. Yes, we have become a destination for students. Our applications, our interest in UT Knoxville is up across the state of Tennessee, and it's dramatically up across the country. And it is true that the night after we beat Alabama, 800 applications dropped that Sunday night, almost all from out of state. And the next night was like another 1,200. And so, yeah, when you're on the national stage, people are paying attention to everything. It's not just, this is one thing I think we're all learning, is that we've been on the national stage all fall because of football. But when that happens, they're looking at everything else. So when you have college game day in the fall twice, that's 3 solid hours of kind of free marketing. And we just had college game day last night for an hour. And we'll have it again on Saturday at the men's basketball game. It's hard to, you cannot find the dollars to pay for that kind of publicity. And I'm just proud of what we show in those moments. So we've had, I think we heard on Wednesday that number is like 49,450 or something like that. And they're saying we might get to 50,000. And I think the comparison he gave us 10 years ago was, 10 years ago we had something like 17,000 applications. That's a dramatic difference. And so thinking about ourselves as a place where everyone around the country is wanting to come here. That it's redefining ourselves. We're going to talk later about how our physical presence represents who we are. So does this. And at the same time, we're doing such a better job of retaining our students. You've heard many times about the Division of Student Success. I sent you their first annual report with the real metrics showing the impact we've had. So just for this fall, the percentage of students that came back from fall to spring, 96.6%. You know, I'm not much of a, rigorous, you gotta have the exact number. In my view, they're all coming back, okay? That's pretty close to 100%. But we've worked really hard in the Student Success Division. We've stood up programs we never had. And one of it is just language. We no longer talk about, we talk about things like group learning sessions. They talk about supplemental instruction as a tutor. You used to think of a tutor as like, that's negative. Only dumb kids get tutors. That's so not true. Our students are learning that students who do the best seek out and find help and find resources. So really, really proud of that. All of that effort comes up under our provost, John Zomchek, who is the best provost in the country. We're so fortunate to have him. He's got a team. I don't know how you keep up with them, John, because they have more creative ideas at any moment in time than I've ever seen. So yes, enrollment is up. So now let me just say right here, that has put pressure on us around housing. So this coming fall, and I've said this numerous times, you combine the reality that we have more students wanting to come here, and we have decided to pull back a little bit in the number of students we admit this fall, pulling back by, not a huge number, we're pulling back a little bit to try to relieve some of the pressure around the pressure we have felt as sophomore students wanting to stay in the dorms. And that's a new thing too. You know, in the past, it's like sophomores couldn't get out quick enough. And I think that's a combination of a couple of factors. Our newer dorms are really attractive. They're built more in an apartment style, so thank you, hats off to Frank's team. What we haven't been doing is planning one new dorm a year for the last 10 years. But we're in high-speed mode about that right now. The other factor that's led to the pressure, obviously, is the market and what's going on in Knoxville. And so many people moving here, and a little tight squeeze on that. We are exploring options of everything we can think of, things that we can lease for a long time, things that we could purchase. And the really great news for us is just a few weeks ago, we got permission from the state to be able to put out an RFP, which is out now, for private developers to build new housing for us on the campus. And there's a lot going up around the campus. The reason we're attracted to that is because it will happen quicker, and it won't be us going into debt. So it's the modern way of building housing. So we're excited about that. There's probably like about another year of squeeze. Frank, is there anything you would want to add to what I've just said about that? Honestly, Frank and now Alan are running point on housing.
No, I think that you're right. This is really presents a great challenge for us, and we continue to look for creative ways to help provide support for our students. The P3 process is certainly going to enable us to do that, to accommodate as many students as possible on campus and in a appropriate campus.
Any questions about that, or comments or thoughts? Every president I know, and well, let me just put it this way. There are other presidents who have the same problem. Most of them have the opposite problem. I have empty dorms. And so while it's a challenge, it's a great problem to be solving. But I feel good about the progress we're making, but we've got probably another year of the most serious pinch.
Excuse me, do we have a plan on like the next year, 3 years, 5 years of how many beds we're going to have? I know you do.
Yes. So we have right now around 8,100 beds. Frank, I'm gonna let you answer that.
That's an excellent question. We have close to 8,100 beds, and then we have a strategy to add close to 5,000 beds over the next few years. And that's a really multi-pronged strategy that involves new construction. We have older facilities. We were talking about, Alan and I were touring yesterday. I was taking Alan around in some of our older halls that are, half our inventory is about 50 plus years old, built in the 60s. And as I was sharing with Alan yesterday, not much has changed in some of these. I pointed out his old U-Box when he was in Reese Hall. And, but I can tell you that that strategy will involve us constructing through partnerships, either as a campus or through private development, and also some master leases. We've been doing master leases on an annual basis in the last 2 years. So it's a really multi-pronged to help provide that support for our students, because we're seeing that the retention rates and more students wanting to stay in close proximity to campus, and to have that support they need to be successful.
You know, it's kind of funny too. I saw a bunch of guys at the basketball game the other night, the freshmen. I asked them where they're living, and they said Carrick. And I was kind of waiting to see what they would say. Carrick eventually is one of those that needs to come down. And I said, so how is Carrick? Oh, we love it. It's kind of old, but we love the dorm. They take on this personality. And so we're really fortunate that students are grateful to have the spots that we have, but we're excited to replace and add net new beds.
I have a question about sort of longer-term demographics, thinking down the road even further. And I'm not sure if this is a you question or an Alan question or a Frank question, but as populations decrease for college, we of course hope that we're going to get more than our fair share, but is there some long-range planning as to how these new facilities, if they are going to be owned by the university, are going to be redeployed in that kind of a circumstance?
I'm going to respond in 2 ways. One is the year that the big drop-off is supposed to hit is 2025, so we've been reading and thinking about it for quite some time. The pattern that we're seeing across the country around enrollments, and John, correct me if I misstate here, is that the big flagships are not really experienced, and I see our architect who works with the big flagships are not experiencing that drop-off. Now, that's not to say, like, we still got to consider that. One of the things I feel comfortable about with our approach is we need replacement dorms. So right now, it's really not possible for us to overbuild. I mean, that's the way I would talk about it, because of our need for replacement. So I guess you could say that's a bit of a silver lining. But yeah, we're quite aware of that, and it's just happened in ways different than people who predicted thought it would.
Thank you.
Anything else you guys would add to that, Alan or Frank?
I have a question on the private development side. I saw the RFP. I haven't read it all yet. Very, very long, as one would imagine it would be.
Lawyers.
Sorry,
Joan.
Are those? Is the university going to master lease those for a long period, or is there flexibility to the point about flexibility on getting out, if you will? Could those ever go to, in effect, market apartments if the demand was such that? I assume they're building apartments that are probably geared towards student housing, but wouldn't necessarily have to be student housing. So is there flexibility to, in effect, sublease those as market apartments to alleviate the inventory issue if you have it?
We are, as we hear these proposals, part of our negotiations will be how we structure the lease, the terms of the particular master lease, or the agreements for the particular developments. Our intention will always be is to create flexible space so that if we were to have the opportunity to create more space for graduate students or adjust the occupancy, now you offer more singles. Certainly if we needed to open that up to market, we could certainly consider that, but we also provide, where we can, opportunities for visitor researchers. We have a number of visitor researchers. So our first priority would be to our own campus community, and then we would have to determine if we have the capacity to do outside. And again, a lot of that is to be negotiated out as we structure these agreements.
And I'll remind you that our limitation on housing has also put a pause on programs we were doing that were quite creative. For example, the Bridge program with Pellissippi, which was students who didn't quite make it in here could live in the dorms, have some of the UT experience, but take their courses there. And so that's just another example of things that moved off the table that could move back on. Okay, so that's about enrollment. Student success, I just mentioned that. We are really setting ourselves apart with the fact that all of our students in their first year, their first week or two, take the Clifton Strengths Finder. We've talked a lot about that in here. It's a strengths-based approach, and it really grows out of philosophy that team has developed around well-being. That let's focus on we know there's like a lot of components that make up a student's well-being, not just how they do in class. and not just do they have friends. It's a whole thing, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, physical. And I'm really proud of the work that we're doing there, and I don't know of another university with this type of emphasis on, and it's philosophically saying, let's take what's right with people and leverage it, rather than try to fix all the things that are wrong. John, is there anything else you want to say about that? It's your team kind of building that?
Thanks, Jess. I think that the most remarkable thing is how responsive the students have been. We had 97% of our first year class enroll in our first year studies program where the strengths are administered, and then we build on those strengths through a curriculum over the course of the program. And our first year students have just been, I think, wonderfully receptive, and it is reflected in the retention numbers. We have over 96%, 96.8 or 9% of the students who began with us in the fall are back with us now. And that's a testimony to the student success folks.
So for example, this spring, all the first year students in the dorms received a packet with a personalized folder indicating their strengths and resource materials about those strengths. So we've really got the housing and the student success working together. They got a personalized keychain, has all their strengths on there. I'm glad, because when I see students on campus, I always ask them, what are your top 5 strengths? And I want them to know what they are. I'm teaching a class this spring with Governor Haslam as part of this New American Civics Institute. And just on Monday, we had our first class, and the students saw my top 5 strengths, and they saw the governor's, and they were all, I mean, these were mostly juniors, quite able to talk about their own strengths. It was just very impressive. So excited about that. You heard a lot about academic restructuring. We brought this to you before. It's become real. We are going forward in February, the Board of Trustees. Anytime there's a new academic unit, we need approval. And so we have 3 new colleges. One I've sort of teasingly talked to the provost about is kind of the funky, fun, and creative college. The actual name we're coming up with at this moment, it's College of Emergent and Collaborative Studies. And it's really largely initially intended as a place that we could incubate quickly new curriculum development that cuts across colleges. And we're not using the term interdisciplinary because I know that within one big large college, arts and sciences, interdisciplinary really kind of refers to all the disciplines in that college. So this is really cross college, which is the hardest kind of collaboration to do in a lot of ways. Some schools have found ways to do it already, but I'm excited about that, and it will be one place where there's a dean of that college whose job it will be every day to wake up and think about, what is the market saying they need now? Do we have that curriculum? What would it take to, how do I get Joe Mazur, the dean of the college of the CCI, to get together with the dean of Tickle and the dean of nursing, let's just say, and come up with something that, I just made that up, Joe, I don't know if that's a reality, hospitals would hire. The second one is College of Music. Nothing really new there, except everything new there. We're pulling them out as a standalone College of Music. Our enrollment management folks are thrilled. Well, maybe we shouldn't be so thrilled. They think we'll get a lot more applications for students who want to study music because it's easier to find it on the website and it shows a real importance and priority for the campus. And then the last one, the Baker Center, the Howard Baker Center is going to become the Baker School of Public Policy and Public Affairs. 2 programs will move there. The first one to move is a master's program in public policy that is now currently in the political science department. And another one is an undergraduate program in public administration. It's now housed in the Housing College, which will move to there as well. And so I can't say enough about how grateful I am for the work that's been done. We have selected R.J. Hindi as the interim executive dean. So we went with the structure. You remember me talking about, is that college too big? How can the subunits within it have more of an identity? And what we landed on, it's not where I started, but through a lot of really meaningful conversation that John and I had, interesting, animated, lively conversation with departments, especially in that college, was we're going to use a divisional structure. So, John, can you name the 3 divisions?
Yeah, division of natural sciences and math, division of social sciences, and division of arts and humanities.
Yeah, and each of those divisions will have their own dean. And it feels like that that address the concerns about needing to be able to focus on your own general area, because what it takes to teach and do research in humanities is really different than the sciences. So we're excited about that, and we're going to get their, we're asking for their approval at the February meeting. Okay, this you've already know all about, you read it all the time, but it's, I just remind you, yes, we think of ourselves as the everything school. That first step, we think we're the only university, the first and only to ever have game day here 4 times across 3 sports. We're proud of that. I also want to lift up, you see the student section there. We also were awarded the best student section in all of college football, and Frank Cuevas gets total credit for that. He sits with the students every week at the game. He's over there representing our values and our everything. And he has such a good time at it. And our students have been great, and we love that they got that recognition. Are you having a big party or celebrate? Are they coming here to celebrate in the fall, or?
We're still working out the details.
Frank's like, no more celebrations.
The Spirit Squad also contributes to this. The Spirit Squad has had top 3 finishes for all 3 categories.
What did?
The Spirit Squad?
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's all part of
we
it.
need to get that on here. 6 current coaches who have led their teams to a #1 ranking that are on our staff. And then the third one is the one that our athletic director honestly gets the most jiggy about, is that we're 13th right now in the overall Directors Cup standings and on pace to have another great finish. He wants to win that. We did win it in the SEC last year. We were #1 in all sports. So that was a start, but Danny's not satisfied with that. So we're going to keep working on that. We have with us today our rock star Vice Chancellor of Research, Deb Crawford. These are just a few highlights. One of the things, Deb, I want to lift up here that you said the other day in the Leadership Academy that I thought was amazing was she said, John, she said, you know, I have meetings with the provost every day, and I have meetings with this position every day. And that tells you how we're working together, because none of this could happen without that team spirit. So we are much more ambitious, big surprise, in the project proposals. Deb has helped us figure out that fewer that are really big are probably better than a whole lot of really small ones. That's my down-to-earth way of saying it. Our requested funding is up almost 70%, so that means proposals. I'm going to let Deb say, why don't you finish this out, Deb? Tell us what that means.
So our faculty submit proposals each year, and at this time, last year, well actually this year we're up 70% over where we were last year in terms of the dollars requested in the proposals submitted. So faculty members have submitted 70% more work this year than over last year. And in the awards category, we're up almost 50% this year over where we were last year.
So what's the difference between a proposal and an award?
Proposals are, we submit our proposals to sponsors. They're usually worth $1 million, $10 million. Award is when the sponsor says, yes, we love that proposal you submitted for $10 million, here's your award.
Okay.
And so generally, the sort of average hit rate is somewhere between 10 and 20%, right? So we submit way more proposals than we win awards, and obviously we want to up that hit rate. We're working hard on doing that.
Okay, and that's proposals to like National Science Foundation. Go ahead.
I was at the vet school last Friday for Education Learning Center, and I've been talking to the deans and Jim, and asked him how many vet schools there were. He said 32. I asked him where we stood out, it was 32. He's about in the middle. So I don't know whether we're 15 or 17, but about in the middle. And I said, well, what can we do to move up? First thing he says, research dollars.
Yeah.
So how can we go about getting more research dollars for the vet school? Do we hire some new professors that can bring a lot of research with them, or do we hire somebody to go out focus full-time to get research in the vet school? Or can you address that?
Absolutely. So we're working closely with the vet school on exactly that. They're one of our higher performing units at the moment, so their expenditures are up more than almost every other college in the university. A lot of that is around collaboration, actually. Our vet school researchers are working much more closely with our engineering researchers, for example, some of the researchers in our College of Arts and Sciences as well. So we look for opportunities, much like the new College of Emergent and Collaborative Studies. We look for opportunities to increase our research expenditures through collaboration, where we really create sort of a secret sauce, if you will, in the proposals we submit.
On our quest to become a top 25 public university, it always gets back to research dollars. It's a big portion of your rankings, so it's a very important department that you're heading up.
Absolutely, absolutely. It gives us much more notoriety on the national stage, almost as important as athletics.
So Deb, are you responsible, I'm sorry I can't read your card, for the entire university's grant writing program or just a specific?
No, the entire university.
So your group, so this represents the entire university?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
So, yeah, in Knoxville. So your group is basically writing these grant requests. And are they grant requests from endowments? Are they companies? Is it across the board? I mean, is it like, if it's the vet school, is it Mars Pet Care? And if it's how does that work?
So the majority of the sponsors of our research are the federal government agencies. About 8% of our research expenditures are from industry, and then 5% from foundations and nonprofits. So the majority of our support is from the federal government, and that is true in most universities in the country. In fact, all universities in the country.
But Deb, why don't you speak about where we are, how you think about us in terms of the herd rankings, with medical schools, without, and kind of what your goal is there?
Sure. So we look at our comparison with other universities, specifically with other universities who do not have medical schools. Because if you have a medical school, you have much greater access to Department of Health and Human Services funding, the largest funder actually in the federal government of academic research. For us, we're not so much funded by HHS because we don't have a medical school. So we compare ourselves against other institutions who don't have a medical school. At the moment, we're ranked 15 in the country with respect to other institutions who don't have medical schools. Our goal is to get into the top 10 in the country by 2026, right? And we're really, to do that, we need to go after much more of the larger funding opportunities, and you can begin to see us do that. That's why you see that 70% increase in dollars requested of sponsors, because we're going after the much bigger funding opportunities, which are much more visible on the national and international platform. And that's what will move us into that top 10 category. So we spent a lot of time working. It was a great question you asked, across all of our colleges, to look for the multidisciplinary opportunities that the combination of talent that we have here at the university creates for us as an institution. The vet school is one of those units. I'm really excited about engaging, for example, our College of Architecture and Design in our research portfolio in ways that they've never been engaged before. And we look at doing that through initiatives like our materials and manufacturing, where our architects are really anxious to participate. So it's looking for unique combinations of expertise that create a strategic advantage for sponsors. That's what my office does. We don't actually write the proposals. The faculty actually write proposals and we support them.
With all the companies that are moving to Tennessee, and of course I live in Nashville, so there a lot of them are moving to Nashville, but that doesn't mean we can't go for our fair share. Are companies like Oracle and Amazon, are those companies that, I assume those companies are so big they have pools of dollars. I know they do. I know, for example, Amazon's funding affordable housing in Nashville, which is interesting. Of course, yeah, Volkswagen. There's just so many companies that have moved to Tennessee, not just to Nashville. are those somebody, I assume there are departments in those companies that folks like you all interact with to try to. Okay.
Yes, in fact, we just came from a meeting this morning with our Eastman partners because we work very closely with Eastman on sponsored research, largely in the advanced materials space. So yes, we work very much with industry partners. Industry doesn't tend to invest a lot in academic R&D. Industry tends to invest in their own R&D, which is a little closer at hand to the product line. But for example, we submitted a big proposal in October last year with 90 industry partners on it, competing for over $100 million of support. So we very much are interested in growing our partnerships with industry. Industries represented here in Tennessee and industries represented across the country and around the world, because again, that lifts the university's visibility.
Work.
One last thing, could you speak a little bit about transportation, mobility, and what we got going in that area?
Yes, so actually that was the big proposal I was referencing. We are working with 100 partners on an advanced mobility initiative, recognizing Tennessee's strengths in automotive manufacturing and thinking about building on those strengths to make Tennessee a leader in the advanced mobility economy. That's with a significant focus actually on automation of the transportation system, decarbonization of the transportation system, leveraging the strengths of Oak Ridge National Lab as well, and thinking about how we position Tennessee as a place of choice for employers and employees in the advanced mobility economy of the future. So in doing that, we're also working with all of the TCATs and community colleges in Tennessee as we think about the workforce needs of an advanced mobility sector. So really sort of trying to leverage all the assets in the state of Tennessee to build the state's economy in that space.
Well, it's playing to our strength.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we do. We look where are our assets and how do we build on them, and if there are gaps, how do we invest in filling those gaps?
I commend you, that's wonderful.
And Deb's office participates right now in the advanced mobility. President Boyd is leading an effort around state dollars and other institutions.
Yes.
And the work that Deb's group has done in that application is going to contribute to that as well. Did I say that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're also hoping to leverage state interests in making investments in this area too. Of course, our colleagues at the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development are really interested in that too, and they're one of our partners in the big proposal that we submitted.
In fact, we were in Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago hosting an event with a lot of our partners. Vanderbilt was there, and UT Chattanooga, TDOT, around exactly this. So we're excited about that. Deb, thank you. So her goal, I know 316 million, that's a high for us. I think I've heard Deb say, we've got to be at 500 million. I don't know. Yeah, okay.
That's right. More.
Okay, thank you. And then we kind of touched on this, the innovation economy, and we are really working, we recognize that industry's moving here. We want for the state of Tennessee to be the next big innovation hub. It's appeared on a list, even actually, I think Knoxville, along with some other cities in South Carolina, other regions, is regional economy. You want to say something about that?
Sure. So Knoxville shows up in a federal study as one of the top 10 cities in the country as ripe for investment in creating an innovation economy growth because of our great R&D capacity, the university's presence here and the ability to produce a workforce, and the state's commitment to workforce across the board. So really excited to be in that top 10, and sort of that also helps us attract industry and federal government investments.
I got to add that to the list of top 10.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting, a lot of work. I think Deb's office is, I think it'd be safe to say they're a catalyst, like bringing people together. As she said, they don't write the proposals, but they help people see, hey, I think you want to participate in this proposal. So a lot of great leadership there. And we are really working hard to put together, Tisha, why don't you say a little bit of something about this? Our effort to translate what we're doing in the research area so that the larger world knows about it.
So Deb and I have partnered on communications related to research, and we've been building a research communications and marketing team that works directly with our office and can use the resources of our office, but also as a seat in the Office of Research table too, so that they can really be plugged into the work that's happening. And so we're doing a lot more kind of audience-focused marketing and communications in the research space to be able to translate some of this really amazing work that's happening here to specific audiences. Some of those audiences are going to be industry publication that are targeted to industry specifically. Some of it is more broad to the general population in the state of Tennessee and nationally and internationally. But we've been working to kind of build that capacity. So you'll see a quarterly newsletter go out that compiles some of the information specific to research that just started in the fall, and we're kind of pulling together more and more of these stories.
So could someone start this video? This is Beth over there.
Yeah.
And Tisha, we need you at the table too. Tisha's our Vice Chancellor for
The
Communication and Marketing.
University of
Here we go.
Tennessee, Knoxville, and Volkswagen partnership is very special in the context that it provides capacity for innovation in multiple areas in addition to manufacturing sector.
Yeah, for Volkswagen it's great to work with UT, especially having all these resources here available with the students, with the infrastructure, with the labs, that we can basically really flexible tap into different areas of the university without even needing that resources ourselves.
They are really leveraging our capacity in certain areas such as advanced materials, high performance computing, and more recently artificial intelligence. And then our very, very unique capabilities jointly with Oak Ridge National Lab.
We found that the University of Tennessee really provides a framework for a very efficient way of collaborating, which includes lab usage and access to expertise of departments and professors to work together on topics. We really are trying to focus on all the major topics that are most important right now in the automotive industry. And we have a lot of new projects with UT where we are working on bio-based materials, recyclability of materials, finding applications for recycled materials, and so on.
I want to work on reducing carbon footprint and fighting climate change. That's my big driver for being here. And by getting to work with Volkswagen, the research I'm doing has the potential to make a much larger impact. So I'm working on replacing completely oil-derived plastics in cars with renewable materials, and hopefully those will be in cars in just a couple of years.
The access the students get through this partnership is very unique, mainly because our students are actually Volkswagen employees as well. So they have access to all of the Volkswagen's resources internally, in addition to being students at the University of Tennessee. So having that partnership is really opening up the abilities of what they can do with their time and resources.
Personally, it's really important for me that I get to work for an industry company while I'm on campus, and I can enjoy not just the lab space and expertise of the University of Tennessee, but also the academic surrounding. It's really stimulating. It's just great to be around students and professors, and there's so much research going on. There's really no better workspace as a scientist.
And we've met over our past meetings have been over at the Research Park at Cherokee Farm, and it's exciting what's going on over there, and you can really feel it. So just let me conclude by saying I 100% believe this. I hope I convinced it to you this morning. There's never been a better time to be a volunteer. And I'll stop right there and take questions, conversation. Yes, Alexa.
Deb, I'd love to ask a question in work that I do in Nashville with universities with the ambitious goal of really getting that grant funding up. How do you deal with the post-award support? Does your office do a lot of that work? Do the departments have to do a lot of that work? because the tracking of the grants and the transparency of actually seeing the grant funding is a big problem a lot of places. And so just curious of how you tackle that here.
So it's a shared effort. I do have folks on my team who support post-award, and there are folks in our academic units who use the data that my team generates to support, tracking of their awards. So and I think most universities use a similar system. And yes, it is. We actually, with the transition to a new enterprise management system, and we actually are hoping to upgrade the tools that we use to better support our faculty, because ultimately it's our faculty's responsibility to track the drawdown against grants, and so we want to provide them with the best data possible that allow them to do that responsibly.
Systems matter a lot.
Oh, huge. And system integration matters a great deal too.
They've got to talk to each other.
Yes.
Point out a couple things. You need help from us, our people that graduate from here, and I'll give you a few examples. Eastman had really stopped giving UT any money a few years ago. It stopped research. And the guy that headed up the manufacturing was an NC State graduate. So guess what? All the research dollars were going to NC State. So I got involved a little bit with the chairman and what have you. And we turned that around, and now they're coming in here. I don't know whether you knew that's for your time. But so that helps. So alumni have to get involved. And so what we want to do is keep bringing in kids that are going to be very successful in their careers when they leave here. If they're successful and they have a good experience here, they will help the university. So it's like a snowball effect going down the hill. So you need help from everybody that's ever been here. It's a little cumbersome. I gave a Pultrusion machine to Oak Ridge a few years ago, and for research and what have you. And I got involved with them and what we're going to do, and then all of a sudden I found out anything was developed that was going to be owned by the University of Tennessee, and I would have to pay to use that technology, which I created. So, were you involved in that, Matthew?
Another lawyer was.
Huh?
Another lawyer was.
Yeah, I knew there was a attorney there, but we got that turned around, got it solved. So there's, but anyway, it worked out, and
Well,
we need good students that are successful.
Absolutely.
And you need help from alumni. So
Do we track I gotta think that there are plenty of alumni from the University of Tennessee that are in a position of decision-making in these, whether it's somebody that can write us a grant or someone that can, I'm sure the alumni group tracks that.
We do, and we have an external advisory council on which we have a number of alumni well-placed in industry who come in and help us do exactly as you're describing, and we do track where our graduates are going and their progression through companies to leverage that influence.
we have the graduate engineering department who was chairman of DuPont.
Right.
And I don't know if you knew that about, but and he's retired since then. But we didn't get a whole lot of research from DuPont, but we should have. And I think we just need to call on them.
Must have had a bad norm.
Thank you all. Just to sum up what you said, relationships matter. Even when you got a well-oiled machine over here, so thank you.
Well, I want to make a comment. I think that the football obviously has gotten everybody excited on a national level. But I also want to commend the chancellor for arguably being she should win the award for best cheerleader in a university setting. I'm not a huge football person, but the social media attention and just the general market attention that this chancellor has brought to the university. The football helped, obviously, in the game day having free ads. But clearly, I think a lot of I realize there's a huge team here, and Deb, your role I didn't know about, it's hugely important. But we have to, I think, commend I just wanted to commend the chancellor for being out there, so visible. I mean, I hear this, people who know I'm involved with the University of Tennessee, who didn't go to the University of Tennessee in Nashville are like, God, your chancellor is really out there, which is in a good way. So I think that we've had some chancellors, I think, that were out there in not a good way. So I want to commend this chancellor at this meeting for taking the football was obviously a big deal, and it is. But there's other things going on here that she does a great job of emphasizing.
Thank you.
Not only football, but basketball.
Well, yeah, I mean, sports. I meant sports. Sports was.
A lot of those teams never got that much attention now.
Right. Well, we have a really sophisticated communications and marketing team, and they've developed a strategy for the chancellor. I'm looking at 2 or 3 of the people who have helped me make this happen. So thank you for saying that, though. The compliments go to them. We have 2 more really important things we want to do before we go to lunch. Don't get ready. We're not going to lunch anytime soon. And adjourn our meeting. But we're going to hear from about our plan, and then we're also going to hear Joe Mazer, our Dean of Communications and Information, is going to whet our appetite for knowing a lot more about the College of Communications. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over and introduce to you Ms. Jessica Leonard, who's the principal at Ayers St. Gross, the architecture firm that has been phenomenal. We're all best friends now. I've had a lot of conversations over the last really almost 18 months. And she's going to walk us through this remarkable master plan. Super excited. So Jessica, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I am Jessica Leonard. I'm an architect and planner and principal with Ayers St. Gross, as the chancellor said. We are an interdisciplinary design firm. More than 80% of our work is for higher education, so we work across the country. I have a personal passion for public R1s and land grants, so this was a perfect project for me. And you get to see me today, but this project is successful because of a large team of people, both at Ayers St. Gross and our local partners based in Knoxville, MHM, CDM Smith for infrastructure and transportation, Newcomb and Boyd for engineering, and Palacio for cost estimating. So we had a great team. You just get to hear from me today. So the chancellor said, one, I love working for a university on the rise, even though all universities deserve planning. But Chancellor, you said, success leads to success. And for those of you, many of you have probably been here longer than I have, 10 years ago, your campus didn't look like this. And I give a lot of credit to the team of individuals that have made that happen. And while all the things we talked about, you've talked about so far today, are critical to the mission of the university, your student experience, student success, your programs, the research enterprise, your athletics. Another thing that will attract and retain students, faculty, and staff is the physical campus. And so that is why I believe planning is really important for the university, and it's required every 10 years in the state of Tennessee, and it really is a process. It builds on each other. You will continue to do it even when this is adopted by the board. It is a continual process. As we engage with the university, we're really deliberate, believing that engagement is key to people understanding, to buying into the plan. And so we had a really engaging 18-month-long process, as the chancellor said, that started with a lot of listening, a lot of stakeholder engagements. We had campus surveys. We were in the union and other places to have people come to open houses. We walked the campus with stakeholders in each precinct to help them see the campus with fresh eyes. We did drawing pinups through our scenario planning. We got to use the School of Design to do that, call them paper dolls. We presented ideas back to the campus community and got feedback. A lot of the individuals around this table met with us every month. It is not always the case that we get senior leadership to really roll up their sleeves with us, and I truly believe that that will allow this plan to be implementable into the future. The plan scope focused on the entire Knoxville enterprise, which did touch Oak Ridge and the UTSI campus, another big part of your research enterprise. A lot of what you're going to see today is focused on the Knoxville campus. And any plan's goal and role is to have the physical campus reflect the mission and goals of the university. Thankfully, you had recently completed your strategic plan, so that really was a foundation, and we used that as a starting point for what our planning principles would be and how we could analyze the campus. And our assessment phase was really looking at two things. What are the physical drivers of the campus, and what are the programmatic drivers? You see on the right, the physical drivers were things like the first impression, the gateways, the arrival, how do people come, what is the legibility of campus? How is it safe and accessible? There's a lot of topography on this campus. It is hard to navigate, and being able to find those pathways, the ways to get into buildings, is really important. Sustainable parking strategy. Parking is like the third rail of planning at every campus. Where are you going to park? Can you park close enough? Can you afford parking? Are you taking away our parking? And so, you know, the whole mobility and transportation and parking is changing. And so how do we continue to accommodate what is needed, but also think, similar to your question about what our buildings going to be, how do we think about what automobiles and the way Ubers and scooters and food delivery was not a thing 10 years ago, and those are things that we're dealing with on campus today. The connections, both internal and external. How do you really embrace the river, the city of Knoxville? All those things are really important from a physical driver perspective. We also spent a lot of time thinking about programmatic drivers. We looked today, fall 21 was our baseline, and then 10 years down the road, what might the campus be if it were to grow? And so there were some key program drivers we knew early on, and the space needs reflected that. We've already talked a lot about housing being a big one. So being able to accommodate the student housing demand. Collaboration, study, and recreation space. There's a lot of things in addition to housing that are needed to support that student experience, both for students today and as the campus grows. As a kind of STEM-heavy school, those STEM instructional labs are needed because not only for majors in STEM, but a lot of the foundational courses are taking those classes. Your expansion of the College of Business will require and is already requiring more space. And then we've spent a lot of time, and I will continue to emphasize, how the physical environment can help these really important research goals for the university. You can see the chart. The campus today was just under, I guess, 30,000 if you do undergraduate and graduate. The plan projects 35% graduate in-person enrollment and 25% undergraduate enrollment in person. There's even more significant growth online, which does have some space implications, but largely we're looking at the in-person population. You clearly have more applicants than that if you wanted to, but the chancellor is absolutely correct. We see this. The flagships are not shrinking. I'm dealing with this with a lot of clients, that the growth and the ability to let students in and be the mission of the land grant, an affordable, accessible education, comes with physical space challenges. And so this plan is really helping you be able to make those decisions into the future. What I don't want you to miss is we talk a lot about new space, we talk about needs. Equally important is taking care of and addressing your existing facilities. And so you talked about housing and needing to be able to either replace or renovate existing housing. There's a lot of outdated facilities. You are not alone. You are a large campus. You're really a mini city. A lot of institutions are facing this, but about a quarter of your existing square footage is in poor condition, and that's through a facility condition assessment, and that's the actual buildings themselves, and that relates to suitability as well. So is the space really conducive to modern learning and modern research? And so while this plan will talk about new buildings, some of them are replacement of existing buildings and some of them are renovations of your buildings that are important. And so it's really a both and, not an either or, to continue on the campus. A big part of a master plan is a space needs assessment. The state of Tennessee has guidelines, the THEC guidelines, that we use as a way to create those metrics. We also have some best practices and guidelines and benchmarks for spaces that are not part of that. We're also documenting where we think that some of the THEC guidelines might not have caught up to how research and instruction are occurring today. The bottom line, if you looked at all of the space on campus today, you would say you're in about relative balance, but really there's some overages in some areas, office space, which is 27% of a campus. It's a lot of space dedicated to office. As that continues to shift, that's masking needs for some of your instructional labs and research today. And then as the campus grows, there's needs across a lot of those areas. Research is the largest, but there's more instructional, as well as a lot of those student support spaces. So spaces for recreation, for collaboration and study space, for student wellness and mental health and physical wellness. So there are physical space needs that pair along with the needs for the condition, as well as what the Vice Chancellor already said around about 5,000 new beds immediately. We are still in the process of doing a little bit of a deeper dive into a market study that will also look at the kind of phasing and financial feasibility of that entire housing stock and enterprise to be able to continue to plan to answer some of your questions about what you'll do in the future. So these became the foundation, looking at the physical campus, the strategic goals, and the space and programmatic needs of the institution. And that led to planning principles, and for today, I'm really gonna present the plan through 3 lenses. And these are kind of key physical planning strategies to think about the physical campus around interdisciplinary hubs. Maybe I should use collaboration instead of interdisciplinary after hearing that, but really these interdisciplinary hubs around instruction and research, some student life clusters of how to start to think about the student experience, and then these larger campus connections. So the first one, to orient, you've got the river, the downtown is to the bottom of the screen, and then the UTIA and research is to the top of the screen. So the purple buildings you see are proposed new instructional or research buildings. Some of them are over top of buildings that exist today that will be demolished. And what you see are clusters in key areas of campus where either there's activity today that we're densifying or areas where there lacks kind of density, and this is an opportunity to increase that. So on the Hill, what's really exciting is the ability to replace Dabney Buehler, which is in very poor condition, with the new chemistry building will allow that. That'll be interdisciplinary STEM-based research, really critical. Then across the bridge, across Cumberland, is a replacement of Jesse Harris for more of the interdisciplinary social, behavioral, human-based research. We talked about not having a medical school. There is ability to increase more of your health science research in that area, and that location proximate to the campus community allows for that. Walters is right down the hill, and right now really creates a barrier between the Union and the Hill. Being able to redevelop that as an interdisciplinary instructional building for teaching labs and instructional space kind of connects that and creates that hub on the top of the hill. Then you go over to Melrose and the new College of Business location. A replacement of the Melrose for student success creates kind of a public policy, international business, international affairs type hub that then connects down into arts and humanities. Expansion of the arts and architecture and science, as well as more humanities space. Those programs are in older facilities. Some of them are being displaced as part of some existing projects, and also creating more classroom space. And so really having key hubs of instructional space on campus that brings students together, give them a place to study, as well as having places for faculty to come together with students. And then where we're sitting today in Circle Park, you've got your new nursing building, communications, and really thinking about ways to tie that better down to the river. And then what was really exciting about this plan, I remember our early meetings, is that this is not just a main campus and UTIA to the side. This is a one campus plan, and UTIA was really part of it. And so making sure that there was greater connectivity where Ag and Vet Med is, so greater expansion of some interdisciplinary facilities on that campus. And then across the river, what is another really important, we talked about partnerships, is the research park at Cherokee Farm, and really leveraging partnerships, interdisciplinary research buildings, whether those are university buildings or business partnerships where industry is coming and wants to partner with the university. And so those create kind of really key hubs to meet your academic and research goals. each one of these, we've done some before and afters of how the physical space between buildings will help also create the space. If any of you have been on the UTIA campus, this is right to the left of us would be the new ERB building that's under construction. This is really what the campus looks like. It is more vehicular dominated, not a lot of sidewalks, not a lot of green space. And so along E.J. Chapman Drive, the idea is to create a vehicular loop road and be able to actually create a place for students and really a heart and center of that campus. And so converting that to a pedestrian spine that has open space, sustainable features integrated, places for outdoor collaboration, dining, and obviously emergency egress and service, but being able to really create a place on these campuses for these interdisciplinary hubs.
Where does the traffic go?
So we've created, I can go, oh, I can probably see it on this one. Around the edge, I guess you can't see it in this, there's a loop road. So there is the ability, it's kind of a start of it, it's kind of finishing that would direct the traffic around rather than cutting right through the middle of the campus. Obviously, there will still be the service and loading that can be able to access that part of campus. The next set of hubs, and they shouldn't be thought of separate because instruction and students need to be together, but for the simplicity of diagramming is you talked about housing. Well, where is housing going to go? The orange colored buildings are existing and proposed housing, and so there is already a plan for where some of the initial buildings in that 5,000 will be. There's capacity beyond that for additional housing. One exciting area that we were exploring is the property that is owned and adjacent to the university on Caledonia, which really gets closer to Cumberland. So you think about that town-gown, edge of campus relationship is the ability, there's a lot of Greek chapters that want to come to campus. And so being able to expand what already exists and increase that, provide other types of housing, potentially even graduate or others in the future, are opportunities. You even see some proposed housing on Second Creek, trying to really bring some more housing closer to academic instead of kind of having an east and west, some more on Circle Park as well, and then opportunities with the bridge to think about partnerships as you think about leasing or other things across the river. This is the area up on Caledonia today. It's sort of like taking your life in your hands as a pedestrian. There's significant topography. There's residence halls right off the screen, and students that are parking are really going down really narrow ways to get there. And so as the university thinks about new residence halls, which one is currently planned, how do you start to think about that as a street and a destination and really having ways to connect back to campus and not make this a back door, really making it a seamless part? And this spine goes all the way over to the new business school as well as that Melrose part, which is a new part that would come down into the core. And so connections and place making in each one of these areas is really critical. And if you've looked at Andy Holt Drive, you've already been doing that and you have that vocabulary. Finally, the campus connections, thinking about the way all of it fits together. So Andy Holt up to the hill is one that exists today, but it doesn't really go all the way. And so how do you really go from the hill all the way to Joe Johnson, all the way to Neyland Drive? How to make that east-west further expand. We talked a lot in the beginning that actually from the hill to downtown is closer than the hill to the housing or to the UTIA campus. It just doesn't feel like it because there's not a great place to walk. And so also being able to leverage Clinch and others to be able to get to the UT Conference Center. But north-south being important too, that hasn't been as much of a focus. So really going from Melrose, as you come across, that's the Caledonia that we were just looking at, down across this proposed bridge across the river to really be able to engage with the river. The little blue dots are areas where we see opportunities to physically get down by the water. We also looked at had a lot of discussion about Neyland and how to convert, whether it's a boardwalk, having a different road configuration that might be able to have a better trail and system that really gets you onto the river as part of this plan and connects you better over to the Cherokee farms as well. So this is Joe Johnson Bridge right now, looking, if you're on the east part of campus, down towards Nealon Drive. You see the crane where the building's under construction. It's just for cars. If you were you wouldn't walk there. You wouldn't even really want to bike there. And there's precedence on Clinch and other parts of the city to do this as a way to really extend that pedestrian spine, still allow vehicular access. It's been under construction and really been closed almost for a year anyway, to really have dedicated bike infrastructure, pedestrian, and really close the gap. Distance is as much perceived as it is real about the experience along the way. And so this is one way to really enhance that east-west connectivity. So that's kind of the fun, visionary stuff. A big part of the plan is also the tactical and coming up with a program plan. And so the requirements are near and mid, and then we have long-term. There's projects, planning's always in process, that are underway, that are being thought of in program studies. And so this list talks about the projects that are already kind of in design or funded in construction. And so you see the Haslam College of Business building, Melrose, 2 of the housing projects that are part of the RFP right now, already in there, that is part of that plan. There's athletic projects as well. So those are kind of givens that were our starting point in this plan. And then really the next era of state capital requests are coming up in the near term. I'm not going to read this list to you, but the way we've bucketed them are kind of by funding sources. And it looks like a large list, but as you know, there's a lot of ways that funding comes in. So there's state ask capital projects. There's ones that are more housing auxiliary, athletics auxiliary, and then kind of more donor funds. A lot of them have a lot of these as part of it, but these are kind of the simplistic ways. And so in that near term, chemistry, this interdisciplinary classroom humanities building, the Jesse Harris site I was talking about, the health and research clinic building, as well as interdisciplinary academic building on the Walters site, are all kind of 5-year big academic and research building asks on the campus that we talked about, as well as you can see a lot of housing, whether that's renovation or new construction or replacement in that near term. The list is so long in the near term, there's 2, because athletics also has a lot of projects. As we've heard, they're doing great, and the facilities need to align with their goals and stature as well. Midterm, and I should say that every one of these you can see there's projects in every geographic area of campus. And so there's really trying to have a series of renovations and new construction, as well as a series of projects that hit students that would be in faculty in all parts. This one has a series of buildings around Circle Park. You get more around the art and architecture humanities district, more on the UTI campus. And then in the corner, there was one in the near term, but also plans for how to renovate and expand and create more research and innovation at UTSI. I got to go there as part of this process. Beautiful, fascinating campus, a lot of really cutting edge research, a lot of lasers and wind tunnel and all kinds of great things out there. And so that is also part of the plan as well. The long term is projects that probably won't accomplish before the next time you get to do a master plan, but you want to have a plan of where you can develop in the long term so you don't make near-term decisions that would preclude you from doing things in the long term. This also shows you have capacity to continue to do things. And so to answer one of the questions earlier, what if the enrollment doesn't grow? What if you, are you overbuilding? The amount of renewal in R&R allows you don't have to build back, but you need to be able to invest in facilities. And there's kind of stack gaps along the way to reevaluate. An important part, we showed a lot of these before and afters, is also the open space and infrastructure that will support all of the plan. Some of them are independent projects. Many of them will be integrated as part of the individual building projects, but looking at key areas for streetscapes, for plazas, for stormwater, for infrastructure, for ways to engage the river is part of the plan. You see that green line around the UTI campus. That's that loop road that would allow for that one road to be closed. So here's a rendering, an illustrative of the new construction and renovation of the 10-year plan. So this does not include those long-term projects. And so this plan accomplishes almost 3 million gross square feet of renewal. So that's a little over half, almost 3/4 of that deficit that we talked about. It provides 3.3 million gross square feet of the non-residential space to support the STEM, the innovation, the student experience, the research, and then an additional 1 million square feet to really support the housing that will be needed that we've talked a lot about today. Finally, a requirement of the master plan for THEC is the campus boundary. And really the boundary, as we've talked a lot about in this process, is not meant to say we're going to acquire a bunch of land everywhere across the state of Tennessee. It's really an opportunity to say these are areas that are really important for the university to think about strategic partnerships with the community, whether that is leasing, whether that could be acquisition. And so this is looking at a 1.5 mile radius around campus that thinks about easy transportation, where you could have services to be able to get there, and where there's likely opportunities for partnerships with business, having clinics or services that would serve the local Knoxville community, both sides of the river.
Just to add right there, it's a change from how
Yes.
we have defined the campus boundary in the past. I like it better because
it's a more general picture rather than like carving out areas where, we think we might want to buy some property there. And,
it's not very,
then we change it. So really, to be honest, if that's the space where we probably would most benefit from enlarging our presence as opposed to just reaching out with little antennas here or there. Did I say that accurately?
What was the logic of, if you look at this, I realize the bridge over, what is the logic of going across the river other than it'd be cool? What is the logic for going, building a bridge over the river to connect to, I guess that would be where Fort Dickerson Park is? Is there land there someone has offered us? Do we already own land there?
Let's let Matthew.
Sure, go ahead, Matthew. Yeah.
He's been working with the city really closely. No, that's okay.
Well, to start with the south waterfront, the city has a 20-year vision plan that then mayor has them started. And so the pedestrian bridge is one of the biggest things in that vision plan, and one of the sort of the final things. The city and the university have talked for years about partnering on that, and because of a lot of starts and stops. But instead of expanding into Fort Sanders, right? If we're going to grow enrollment, where's the housing going to come from? Well, housing has already started to develop on the south, right? But there are several student apartment complexes over Chapman Highway, sort of where near where Regal sits. But students have to drive across the Henley Street Bridge. Yeah, so right now, if you live over there, even though it's a stone's throw away, you have to cross the Henley Street Bridge, go on campus, drive to the G10 garage. But if the bridge existed, and I'm just speaking for students, there are city of Knoxville impacts from the bridge that the mayor can address better than me. But so students living across, we have a lot of students who live across the river, and so they could bike or walk, and also Cherokee Farm. Eventually it sort of connects Cherokee Farm in a unique way to campus. There's also the urban wilderness out there that the city has invested a lot of money in. And so just in terms of recreation for our students, the city's become nationally known for this thing called the urban wilderness, trails, biking, hiking. And so it really, and also just for faculty and staff as well, it'd be another place that faculty and staff could potentially live closer to campus instead of you live in West Knoxville or north or south. So it could become, we could become a campus where faculty and staff live closer. Downtown's obviously developing. So I think the bridge, it's not the only place we're focusing, but eventually Chapman Highway is going to probably transform as Alcoa Highway is starting to transform. And so just having another of access point to campus.
Is there more dirt there, Matt, to build more, is there better dirt available to be able to, for example, the bridge is there, is there dirt there to build housing? Is there enough dirt?
Well, there's certainly, some property still on the riverfront, and there's a residential area over there that, the city in their plan has set some zoning requirements and that sort of thing. So, the university is talking to the city. We want to respect sort of the vision plan, with respect to how that's zoned. But our intent's not to go acquire, a bunch of property over there and create another campus over there. It's really,
That would be the perfect place for public-private.
right, and that's what
residential development.
we're
Yes.
envisioning partnerships with the city and private developers.
So am I understanding, if I've read this correctly, that there's still at the end of the 10 years is going to be a pretty significant deficit in the amount of parking? Is that right?
Oh, sorry. No, I did not have a slide on parking. No, there's not a deficit. Well, today, there is a slight deficit today for demand. I will say there's a lot of ways parking can be accommodated on campus. Right now, the policy is, a lot of cars come, you park pretty close. Students park very close to their residence halls. There's a lot of policy things that can be done to address parking. A lot of institutions, particularly to the north, don't allow freshmen to have cars. I see in the south that's not as common for recruitment, but NC State, the freshmen don't leave their car right on campus. They have a lot and they've got that shuttle. So there's ways to address that, but there's also demand management, different ways. This does have some significant garages that will take surface lots today and be able to create greater density. There was one by the current rec center, the large one right along the railroad tracks, that would be about 1,000 cars. That is really proximate to campus, right along the Andy Holt, Joe Johnson Boulevard, and be able to have cars not come too far into campus, but not be so far on the edge that they have to walk. But we've discussed a lot that mobility and transportation is kind of an ongoing thing that needs to be evaluated, not only from an infrastructure of how many spaces, but also policies and costs and all of the things that come together to make that system work as an auxiliary, but also be able to serve the campus community.
Thanks. And also, I might be jumping back. The 1.5 mile radius that you had is the least, I don't know what percentage of those 5,000 beds is going to be leased, but are we trying to keep that in that 1.5 mile radius?
I think so, yes.
Yes, the answer.
I've read some research about driverless cars,
Mm-hmm.
and research tells me that there will be a need of about 25% parking places that we have now down the road. Cars will be coming, picking you up, taking in, they go somewhere else and get you, what have you. So we're not going to need as much parking in the future as we have now, so you need to look at
Yeah.
that.
So you don't want to overbuild. Those cars are going to have to be somewhere, so there will be parking somewhere in the world, but they'll keep moving a lot. And there's also a lot of Ubers. I mean, a lot of things now is, for mobility studies, is where's the drop-off point? Where do you want food delivery? Do you want them coming to every residence hall? Do you want the drop-off to class? I also noticed, we talked a lot about there's really not very good visitor parking on campus. You really park across Cumberland by the Union and the Student Center, and that's where you come as a first-time freshman visitor, but as an individual that I have to come, I could be going anywhere and see a lot of campuses where there's a pay to park or a park mobile. That's another revenue generator, but there's ways to put spaces around. Yes, maybe some students are going to do that for a class, but by and large, if they are, they're going to pay a lot of money to do that. But having more accessible parking around campus for visitors is another strategy as well to consider that we've talked about.
That's another next step for us, that's narrowing in on a specific piece. We need a study about parking that accounts for all of these things you just mentioned, as well as our current needs. So we've got to address that. So great question.
Yeah, I'm super glad we're talking about parking. For example, I was late to a class yesterday because there was no space within a proximate area coming back from lunch, and that's not a good showing, for us as faculty. There's another issue connected to this. I love, first of all, thank you for summarizing what is a much larger executive summary in a smaller set of slides. That was super helpful. But as I looked at the wonderful pedestrian walkways that you're planning, and I do walk the campus, and I have walked across the Joe Johnson Bridge and back from the law school. I'm wondering about disabilities, and this, John, I think ties into your point and the changing nature of transportation as well. One of the reasons why some of those roads are there, or a reason to have them, is so that people can be dropped off who have mobility issues. And I'm aware of that because I have friends and colleagues who fit into that category. I hope that part of what we're planning with alternative transportation strategies, drop-off points, golf carts, other things that may be able to be used to get people to some of these buildings, while a lot of us who are more mobile are enjoying those beautiful pedestrian walkways, are part of the plan.
Yes, that's a great point, and I think the topography makes it even. We had another running joke about the number of bridges we were going to propose in the plan because of getting that connection. But really the only road that we've proposed closing is that Chapman Drive, and that really provides ability to have the loop road that would connect and accessible parking, as well as keeping the vehicular, and then bike infrastructure is another one. You don't have a ton of it on campus, and with e-bikes and other things that can help mitigate the topography, I think that would be. But you're exactly right that thinking about all mobility abilities is really important, and we've tried to make sure we're not prohibiting accessible parking at any part, or the ability for people to have wheelchairs or other forms of transportation.
Thank you. I also actually was thinking of Caledonia, a road on which I leaned over to Jordan and I said, I got into an accident. That's how terrible that road is. Because my football parking was near there last year. And so that's the back way to get in so you can avoid Cumberland. So I think another aspect of this is the parking, not just for faculty and students, but on football weekends, and how we're going to address, because those back ways are the only way sometime that you can get into the campus if you know where you're going. So taking away that road, while I think a great idea in a lot of aspects, also takes away an ingress sort of way into the campus.
We still had some vehicular circulation on it. It was just, right now it's, as you said, you can barely get there, and there's no pedestrian, and so this is, setting the buildings back. But you're right. There's so many little ways to get in and out and connect across campus.
Isn't it safe to say that parking has been an issue here this would be a great time for me to share my wife's story about Circle Park, which I'll share that at lunch, not on the public record. She'll be grateful for that. But a few people have already heard that. But parking clearly is an issue. And to Mr. Tickle's point, who knows? I've been hearing studies that we're not going to have, we're going to have self-driving cars and only take Ubers. We're going to have all electric cars. I know in Nashville, when the temperature got to below zero a few weeks ago, TVA had the rolling power deals, and I'm just thinking about what's going to happen when all of us plug our cars in overnight. So I don't think we know enough to probably plan for what parking is going to look like. I'm old, so it doesn't matter, but I think we'll have parking needs. I don't think this complete metamorphosis into self-driving cars and Ubers is going to be quite as dramatic or soon as some people think, and I may be wrong, and I'll be gone, and I won't have to worry about it. But
thank you for that.
Somebody can run off you.
I know, right?
Do we have any other comments?
I love this slide here, and I love the conversation, but I was in high school in Chattanooga when you didn't go downtown. And the whole renovation of what Chattanooga did was surrounded by the river. Okay, and now it's just unbelievable. And I think that the city of Knoxville and the university, we haven't really, that is a huge asset. So when I take prospective students and people to football games, I get up there on top of that and I show them the Vol Navy and talk about what the river really means. And if you look what we have, I know we're talking parking here, but G10, that real estate right there is the best real estate on this campus with that river. And there's another parking lot. I was standing with Coach Barnes on the top of Pratt Pavilion looking at that river, and he had these ideas on how we tie the river into Pratt, Thompson Bowling, and into Neyland Stadium down there, that could just be unbelievable at some point.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at the Ford, and the Ford is not where I'm taking prospective people. And if we could figure out G10 to be up in the Ford, and then be able to use that space right there for tying the river, and it should just be incredible.
Well, you're right, Alan. Downtown Chattanooga is completely transformed by orienting the city to the river, and UT Chattanooga is kind of played into that. So,
Okay,
I have one more question.
one more question, and then we're moving on. Yeah. Jordan.
Now, I was at the original presentation a couple of days ago in the student union, and you talked about the concept of swing space in a sense of when all of these buildings are being renovated or being built, you know, the apartments get displaced and they get somewhere else. I just think it's important to bring that into the conversation. So I know you talked about it then, but could you kind of build on talking about the concept of swing space and like how many moves the apartments will have to make? Because I hear all the time from students and faculties about just the hardships of being displaced and not having space. So I just want to hear some more about that.
Great. Glad you were paying attention on Wednesday. The question had come up, obviously, as new buildings are built and are demolishing existing buildings where there's people, those people have to go somewhere. And the ideal scenario would be that there's already a building ready for them and people move once and you just have a domino. What you need to do in order to do that is build up either the swing space, you have to build that extra building. And so as we've talked in this plan, is you see the finished product of these buildings, but in a lot of our planning studies was actually figuring out which ones went in each phase. There were some that we thought were really exciting to have sooner, but when you actually looked at what it would take to get the people out and not move them 5 times, was the ability to think about, well, if you did this project first, which building would that allow you to move people into or out of, and then where's the next open site, and how do you do that in a phase? And so the ideal is move once. The next best is that you have a building that can be a swing space building where it's a temporary year or two where you might move your office. It's not a terrible building, it's a building that you can sit in and not feel like you're remote and be able to be there and then move into your new building, or a renovated building. And so that is an important part of this, and I feel like the Chancellor said a commitment with this larger team to make sure those plans are in place and that hopefully it's communicated at the start of projects what that plan is to the best that people know. So thank you for bringing that up.
Jessica, thank you so much and for everything. It's just really, really exciting, and I hope you got a glimmer of the hope that we've got about all of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for partnering with us.